been a tough month trying to grind on the arena ladder, and we have found ourselves stuck in the gold tier for a number of weeks. Alongside the usual force of mono red, a recent rise in flash based decks have seen the arena meta shift. The Sultai flash deck that makes use of the Wolf from M20 alongside a refreshed mono blue tempo has made it difficult to string together enough wins to see us progress up the ladder. So if you can't beat them, join them, and that is what we did by riding the mono blue train all the way to platinum. The deck list we use is in the description box below, but that is not what we are focusing on today. Seeing as we are at the bottom of Platinum 4, it is a perfect time to try out something fun. And what is more fun than a huge 7/7 dragon that deals a total of 10 damage when it attacks? So can a Reanimator deck built off the back of a massive dragon help us make it to Mythic? Cue the dramatic intro. We are playing a reanimation strategy that looks to cheat big creatures into play early, with our main focus being Grixis Maw of Flames. We're bringing back using Bond of Revival, as this also grants haste, meaning we can get the attack trigger from Grixis as soon as he enters play. Our other reanimation targets are single copies of Burning Sun's Avatar and Agent of Treachery. Both of these creatures have impactful enter the battlefield abilities that we want to take advantage of. The rest of the deck is designed to help us achieve our main goal. Rixmadi Reveler, Charter Course, Search for Azcanta, and Tonebound Lich are our sources of discard so we can get the reanimation targets into the graveyard. Thought Erasure allows us to disrupt our opponent's early game, as well as surveilling a big creature into the graveyard for later. We finish off with a removal package of Tyrant Scorn for small aggressive creatures, Cry of the Carnarium and Ritual of Soot sweep the board and help us stabilise, and Enter the God Eternals can give us some much needed life gain, as it can take a while for our plan to come together. A full sideboard is provided in the description box below, and be sure to check out Martin User's article on the deck on channelfireball.com. Our opponent has a fast start with a Pelt Collector and a Barkhide Troll, with us only having a tap land. After taking 2 damage, we Tyrant Scorn the Pelt Collector before it gets too big. Steel Leaf from our opponent, and we take a further 3 from the Troll. We cast Charter Course, knowing we can sweep the board next turn, and find the perfect Reanimator target in Grixis. We discard the dragon and pass the turn. A second Troll from our opponent, and we take 8 damage. We cast the Ritual to clear the board. Our opponent then plays a Thorn Lieutenant and passes. We decide to be cautious and cast Thought Erasure to see what our opponent has in hand. This reveals a Golter and 2 Harpooners. The Harpooners can kill our Grixis, so we need to be aware of that. We take 2 from the Thorn Lieutenant after they cast another Troll. We graveyard a land and transform the search before Grixis rises from the dead. It's alive! Before we attack, our opponent gives the Troll hexproof, so we cannot target it with the damage. We deal damage to the Lieutenant and our opponent and take them to 10. Harpooner kills off our dragon with its fight ability, and we go to 2 following their attack. The top deck gods are with us, however, as we draw and enter the God Eternals. This allows us to kill off the Troll, have a blocker on board, and gain 4 valuable points of life. They cast their second Harpooner, which is fine with us as we have a second Grixis in our hand. We draw a Lick for turn, whom we cast as the Death Touch is useful against any big creatures they play. We discard the land we draw and pass. Nullhide Ferox from our opponent, and now we are really glad that we have Death Touch on board. We draw a Ritual of Soot, which would kill everything but the Ferox, so it's not really any use to us at the minute. Our opponent attacks with the Ferox and we block with the Lich. They follow up with a Llanowar Elf and we search in response, finding a Tyrant Scorn. We draw a Thought Erasure and take a look at our opponent's hand. This reveals another Harpooner whom we discard. Our opponent uses their turn to attack with everything, and we Tyrant Scorn the Harpooner before blocking the Llanowar. They follow up with a Steel Leaf, and on our turn we cast another Grixis who frightens our opponent so much they concede. We lead with a Temple land that scries into a Thought Erasure. A Leapkin Druid from our opponent suggests it is the Elementals deck. We cast a Thought Erasure, and our opponent's hand reveals a Chandra Planeswalker, an Omnath, a Grixis, and a Chandra's Regulator. Frankly, these all suck, and we wish we could take all of them, but alas, we discard the Omnath as the Ritual in our hand will at least kill the Grixis. We graveyard a second Ritual and pass. Chandra from our opponent, and she makes 2 Elementals with haste, which is going to get very annoying very quickly. We go to 16 and draw another Ritual for turn. We cast a Lick to draw a card and discard the spare Ritual in hand. This also gives us a 6 land so we can try and hard cast the Avatar. Opponent casts the Regulator and activates it so Chandra's ability to make elementals occurs twice. They attack with 4 creatures. We block one with the Lich to gain a point of life and go down to 14. We draw a Bond for turn but have no reanimation targets in our graveyard. We attack Chandra for 1 to make a start on removing her and pass, knowing we can take some damage next turn. They activate the Regulator again to double the number of elemental tokens before casting a Grixis. We take 4 damage and go to 11. We draw another land and attack our opponent to try and get the card draw trigger. We draw a check land and discard a shock land before wiping the board with Ritual of Sun. Opponent discards and draws using the Regulator before casting another Leafkin Druid. We get hit for 4 with the tokens once again and go down to 8. We draw an Agent of Treachery and cast the Burning Sun's Avatar. We use his ETB trigger to deal 3 damage to Chandra and 3 damage to the Druid, clearing our opponent's board. They scry with the Temple before casting Omnath, who looks like he will be much happier on our side of the board. So we oblige by taking control of him using the Agent of Treachery on our turn. We attack for 6 and take our opponent to 11. Lava Coil and Shock from our opponent directed at our dinosaur means that he dies but goes to exile, so we are unable to reanimate him with the revival we have in hand. We draw an Enter the God Eternals and attack for 5. Our opponent plays out another Temple to scry and passes with no cards in hand. As our opponent is on 6 life, we cast the Bond to reanimate the Lich from our graveyard, giving us enough power on board to attack for lethal. The Magic Gods giveth and the Magic Gods taketh away, as this win was followed by 3 losses in a row, putting us right back where we started.
Can we please play D&D now?
We get back to winning ways, however, after our opponent, piloting a feather deck, timed out, handing us the victory. We keep a 7 with good early plays and our opponent leads with the Healer's Hawk. We pass with 2 mana up as we are expecting a Pridemate next turn. Bodyguard from our opponent and they attack for 1. We kill the Bodyguard on their end step using the Tyrant Scorn. We draw a Cry, which should be very good in this matchup, and cast the Lich, discarding a land after drawing a Steam Vents. We take another point of damage after our opponent conclaves our Lich. Agent of Treachery is our draw and we cast Charter Course as we want to hit at least 2 creatures with our Cry. We draw 2 lands with the Charter Course and discard one of them before passing. Another point of damage from the Hawk and our opponent passes back. We scry and Azcanta to the top using a Temple and pass once again. A second Hawk from our opponent and they take us to 17. No more life gain for them, however, as we cast the Cry, exiling both birds. We finish with a Search to help us smooth out our coming draws. Lyra Dawnbringer enters the fray for our opponent and we make a misplay by putting a land into our graveyard from the Search trigger. Had we drawn the land, we could have cast the Agent of Treachery and taken the Lyra this turn. We draw a Drakuseth and pass as we have nothing in the graveyard to reanimate this turn. Opponent hits us for 5 with the Lyra and follows up with a History of Benalia and a Sky Marcher, triggering the City's Blessing. We graveyard an Avatar so we have a target for the Bond and transform our Search. This gives us the 7th land we need to hardcast the Agent and take control of the Lyra. Opponent casts a Snubhorn Sentry and attacks us for 2 using the Sky Marcher. We draw an Enter the God Eternals and reanimate the dinosaur using the Bond in hand. We point 3 damage at our opponent and 3 at the Snubhorn, and in response they cast Unbreakable Formation to give all their creatures indestructible. We cast a second Search and pass as Lyra blocks brilliantly against our opponent's board. They attack with everything, we block the Sky Marcher and both Knight tokens. They cast God's Willing so a Knight survives against our dinosaur and we go to 12 following the life gain from Lyra. We graveyard a land and draw a Thought Eraser for turn. We then send in the big guns and cast Drakuseth before attacking with Lyra. Our opponent takes 5 damage before conceding the game. We keep a very risky 7 with all tapped lands and scry a further tapped land to the top. Fortunately, our opponent has a slow start with 2 clifftop retreats, so we are not falling too far behind. We play the Catacomb so we have access to black mana next turn and our opponent shocks us on end step. They casted a Donto Vanguard for turn, which we have no answer for currently, so fingers crossed we can find the Cry. We draw a Bond for turn, scry a God Eternals to the top using the Temple, and cast Rixmadi Reveler, discarding the Drakuseth to draw the God Eternals. 10th District Legionnaire from our opponent and a Gird for Battle gives them a total of 8 power when they attack. We block the Vanguard and they pay 4 life to keep it around. Charter Course is our draw and we cast the Lich as the Death Touch should keep the Legionnaire at bay. We draw a land which we need for the Bond and discard the Charter Course. Opponent plays a second Vanguard and attacks us for 4. We choose to take the damage in the hopes that we can stabilise in the next couple of turns. We scry a Watery Grave to the top as we need a second Black Source for the ritual and cast another Lich. However, This was a bit of a misplay as we don't actually want to discard any of the cards in our hand, so we risk it and discard the land, thinking that the ritual is actually not that great at the moment as it would kill our blockers and leave them with 2 Odontors on board. Our opponent casts Feather and attacks with both Vanguards and the Legionnaire. We block both the Vanguards as it will cost them 8 life to keep them both. They pay for both and we take 6 damage from the Legionnaire after they cast a Defiant Strike. Thanks to the Odontor Vanguards taking down our opponent's life total, we are actually now in a position to win. We bond the Grixis, giving it haste and attack, dealing 4 damage to Feather and 3 to our opponent. This clears the way for Grixis to take the victory in combat. We then play a game against Esper Hero, which is still around to spoil everybody's fun. Our opponent went a bit crazy making tokens off the hero and Saheeli and creating a board state that was far too wide for us to handle.
Now can we play D&D?
No.
We keep a 7 with lands and spells and scry a search to the top. Opponent plays a Stone Quarry and we cast a Thought Erasure to take a look at what our opponent has. This reveals another Feather deck, and we discard the Legionnaire to keep our opponent off tempo. We graveyard a Grixis for later and pass. We draw a second dragon and scry a Tyrant Scorn to the top as it will be a good answer to Feather if they cast it next turn. We get a search online and pass. Opponent does not cast Feather however and instead casts Gideon, who could be a real problem. We draw the Tyrant Scorn and cast the Reveler to act as a chump blocker. We discard the Grixis to draw a swamp and pass. Feather from our opponent, and we cast the Tyrant Scorn we have in hand in response to the Gideon activation to get it off the board. They attack for 4 and we block with the Reveler. We graveyard a land before drawing a Thought Erasure. We draw 2 more lands from the Charter Course and then cast a Thought Erasure to disrupt our opponent's hand some more. Once again we discard a Legionnaire and put a land in the graveyard from the Surveil. Gideon then uses his muscles to punch us in the face for 4 damage.
And another shot!
We graveyard another land from the Azcanta trigger before drawing a land for turn. We transform the Azcanta and activate it immediately to look for an answer. We find a bond and take it with a plan to revive Grixis next turn. Opponent shocks us to 12 on end step before casting a Defiant Strike and an Arcanist on their turn. They attack for 5 with Gideon and take us to 7. We draw a second bond and reanimate Grixis from the graveyard. We attack Gideon with the Grixis, pointing the damage at our opponent and the Arcanist. They cast God's Willing to ensure the Arcanist survives, but we kill Gideon. On their turn they cast a Sky Knight Vanguard and a Gird for battle, giving both creatures a +1/+1 counter. We draw a land and before we attack, our opponent concedes. We remain in Platinum 4 after this run as the inconsistency of the deck didn't actually allow us to put together enough wins to move further up the ranking. In conclusion, this deck is great when it has the chance to do its thing, however, it may not be the best choice if grinding up the ladder is your number 1 priority. It is far too inconsistent and can falter easily against aggro decks. If you are however looking for something a bit more casual to play, or for a fun FNM level deck, then I would certainly recommend this. As always, if you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing to the channel and giving us a like. You can also connect to us on Facebook and Twitter at Making Mythic, where you can find all the other videos we've made, spoilers that are released, and memes to make you laugh. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.